you all remember when the earthquake happened in 2010? That was a big thing. It was one of the biggest mobilizations of dollars here in the United States. Largely, I think, as a result of the texting you could do, where you could text a donation. It's like text this number, and it was one of the first times you could do that. And Red Cross figured out how to do that, and this organization called, gosh, what's the name of the organization? The singer guy.
Oh, Wyclef Jean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He figured out, he actually got in trouble for his organization got in trouble for mismanagement of funds, but Wyclef figured out, what's the name of the organization? Do you remember off the top of your head? Yele, I think it's called Yele.
That sounds right.
So that earthquake sort of mobilized me as well after all these years being away from the country, to get my act together and think about. I kept thinking about, because I had some schooling in Haiti and family ties to the country, then I figured, well, who better than me to figure out how to do something? I just felt like thinking. I felt like I always felt like it was an obligation. I couldn't, that was my generation that needed to do stuff. Not every, I didn't think that, I think everyone needed to help, but in particular those people who had some language skills and had some ties to the country and knew how to manage resources in a way that they wouldn't be stolen, which we try to minimize that. So that earthquake really sort of got me thinking about how I could help. And I fumbled around for a long time. I couldn't figure out, I have a lot of contacts, so I was able to get on the ground and to bring, we raised about $25,000, and we were able to buy some medical supplies and food supplies and actually land them using some missionary network people that I know. The missionaries actually have amazing networks. Whether or not you agree with what they're doing, trying to convert people, is another story. But their networks on the ground in Haiti and in developing countries where they've been for 50 years, they can do logistics, they can do. So my best friend from 5th grade when I lived in Haiti, she was a missionary brat, and so we just got together and figured out how to land the stuff that we bought and the people donated, using the Missionary Flights International guys who are great, amazing flyers, and they could drop in some supplies, and then we could move them from drop point to Lagunov, different places around the island. So that's that was my beginning. Oh, it's we can raise money and we can do something good. We set up a couple clinics and we were able to help people through the real difficult time directly after the earthquake. And then I was working with a women's group because I believe in women's empowerment issues and trying to think about the role of women in Haiti. And Haiti, in the earthquake, had lost most of its sort of feminist activists. They lost a whole bunch of women leaders. They died in the earthquake. And it was very, very sad. I have an aunt who was one of the, I would say, probably first women out there for women's rights in Haiti in the this would have been the 1950s, probably 50s, 60s. She was also big on education, so women's rights education, and she developed the first kindergarten for Haiti, all of Haiti. So the first kindergarten ever. She created this school. And her daughter, my aunt, then created the first reading program. It was a French reading program for little kids to be part of this kindergarten that the family had started. And then now her daughter, my cousin, these are all cousins. First cousin runs from Mood or whatever they are, now continues the program. So a lot of education, a lot of women around women's issues, and so that's sort of also part of the motivation for getting involved in Haiti and trying to think about women. And so that journey led me, through just figuring out how to raise money, how to land supplies, and then thinking about women's issues and working with Haitian American women who were in prominent places. One was in the U.S. Embassy in Haiti, a couple of academics, other people working in industry, trying to get together to see what we could do as maybe a think tank or offer consulting services or, so we started this group called Women Beyond Mountains. But it never went anywhere. It slowly died because people had so many other things going on in their lives and children and families. And Haiti is difficult, really, really hard place to work. If you want to work I'd say one of the hardest places in the world to work, go to Haiti. And it will challenge you every single day. And then so I started working with this, group called Haiti Projects, which is a terrible name. They should have a better name. Because that's what the name is. I couldn't do anything about the name, so I changed the logo. Because the logo was terrible. It was this woman on a donkey carrying stuff. I just thought it wasn't very empowering. It didn't send the message that I wanted to send, which is, women's empowerment is really, really important. We need to think about how to lift people up using healthcare, education, and jobs. So how can we jump and leapfrog and move Haiti forward? So I asked my daughter, who's now 17, which I think she was 15 at the time, we need to think about how do we move Haiti forward? What's the symbol? What could it be? So Anna started drawing, and she drew this girl, jumping forward, and she had sort of straight hair. I said, okay, Anna, but you have curly hair, and so do I, and I think most people in Haiti have curly hair, so maybe we could put some curly hair. So we added, and then one of my graduate students from MIT helped me add the rest of it. So that was sort of that coming together of the logo, which was sort of, building the logo and trying to understand, what is the mission, what is the purpose, what are we going to do over, say, the next 5 years for Haiti, with Haiti, as part of Haiti. And so that's where the logo comes from, and I think it talks a lot about what we're trying to do. So Haiti Projects is, as I mentioned, on the ground in Haiti and also here in the United States in Massachusetts. I just moved the company down to Hanover, Massachusetts, because that's where I grew up, not only in Haiti but also in Hanover, Massachusetts. So have a lot of contacts there and trying to plug other people into the project down there. But in Haiti, we're here in the southern peninsula. And Port-au-Prince is the capital. Maybe you've heard of it, and since that's where the big earthquake was. The center of the earthquake is here in Léogâne. Also, it's considered the voodoo capital of the world, which is for the superstitious people out there who say that that's why the earthquake happened, because of voodoo stuff. There are lots of interesting reasons for why we had an earthquake in Haiti. My family is from the north, up here in Gonaïves, that's where my father and his family, where my father was born and grew up. But before that, they lived in Cape Haitian up here in the north. And in 1842, there was a big earthquake there as well, huge earthquake there, which sent the family south as a result. So it looks like it's not too far away, right? Actually, it's about 72 miles from here to here. And it takes 3.5 hours to get there by car. So it is far because you have to travel. But if you fly, it's only 15 minutes. But I work for a nonprofit, so we can't afford to fly. So if we zoom in on Fondé Blanc, what do we see? Where are we? Here's the main national road, and you come in on this road. This is all dirt roads. There are no paved roads. There's no electricity, and there's no running water. So we're off the grid, completely off the grid, and we're in order to get here, we have to go through several rivers. Go through them, like go drive right through them. But we just did get one bridge on one of the rivers, so we no longer have to go through that river anymore. So when you're thinking about, what conditions you're working in this part of the region, you really need to completely think off-grid. Solar, water collection, lots of poverty, lots of disease, but at the same time, amazing vegetation, amazing fruits, amazing vegetables, a lot of assets as well. So I don't want to paint Haiti, as so many people do, as just this poverty-stricken, disease-stricken place. There are many beautiful aspects to the country that I think we forget about, but we did know at some one time. So Saint-Ouen is the center of Fondé Blanc, and that's where all of our operations are. All the points on this map that you see are where our clinics, so we have a women's healthcare clinic, so remember I was talking about women's empowerment. But we believe that part of empowerment is jobs, part of empowerment is healthcare, specifically family planning. We're focused on family planning and trying to help women decide on how many children and how spaced out they want those children to be. Spaced out, I mean, how, not spaced out, but how far apart these children. If you go to rural areas like Haiti, you will find malnutrition is a big problem. And malnutrition of not only the children, but also the moms. And then so the mom will be carrying a baby, she'll be pregnant with a baby, and she will be malnourished herself, and she'll be nursing one, and she'll have one next to her. So there could be anywhere, before this project was started 20 years ago, anywhere between 9 and 12, 13 children. And then the more children that women were having, the more difficult it was to provide opportunity to those children. So the question was for the nurse who founded Haiti Projects, her name is Sarah Hackett, how can we teach family planning, birth control that works for these women? They can't read, they can't write, most of them, about 70% illiteracy rate. How can I facilitate? So we reach out not just in Santan where our main clinic is, but we have Le Monde way up there. We have a satellite clinic, and then these are all the places where our mobile clinics go. So we have and the yellow points are planned clinics, new clinics that we've just added. Meaning, like you show up, you're on a motorcycle, and it's a tree. That's our clinic. The tree, and we treat people. We work with people under that tree, provide education under that tree. The stationary clinic's actually a building about this, a room about this size, 2 rooms, and then we can actually see patients like you would in any kind of clinic setting, and satellite clinic as well. So we hope to reach. We can reach about 36 of the rural communities right now. There's a total of 40 that we'd like to reach. So we'd like to expand next year, over the next year or so, our clinic. Some of these places, especially the ones sort of out in these areas, you cannot, so you have to, places you can reach by car, places you can reach by motorcycle, and some places you have to go by motorcycle and then walk, up the hill or down the hill. So so access is a real big challenge for us, just getting information and materials and medicines and all of that out is tricky. So that's the kind of area you're dealing with. Okay, so how is this thing set up? I took over this company about a year and a half ago. The company was having a lot of financial problems, a lot of struggles. Basically, it was just a situation where the CEO had not managed funds very well, just probably the wrong person. The founder had stepped down, had let this person take over, and this person just probably wasn't the right person. So a year and a half ago, they asked me to I was on the board of Haiti Projects, they asked me to take over the company and see if I could turn it around and make it grow. As of today, we filed our taxes yesterday. We turned it around, and now it's starting to grow. So I'm super, super happy, and we're really on this great trajectory right now, because the thought of having to fire 100 women or letting those clinics go or not building a library was personally devastating, would have been devastating. So my idea is that this social or this nonprofit would be something other or bigger or greater than a nonprofit, that it would be something like a social enterprise, meaning not only would we take in donations, but that we would also, and grants, but we would also generate, each unit could possibly generate a source of income for that unit. So that someday, when I step away from this project, or I move on to another thing, or whatever I do, it could stand on its own, or at least it would be in a more stable place than it is. Because always relying on donations from people from the United States may not be a sustainable business model in the long run. Who knows, it may be. Hopefully for the next 5 or 10 years it will be. But looking ahead, how can we, in the end, maybe even spin off some of these units that we have. So we have, this is the US engine, and we do sales. We focus on sales of products, donations, and strategic partnerships, but also grant making happens in the United States. And I have a team of, there are 4 of us. Okay, and then we have the art and a board. The artisan workshop, this is located in Santon, in Fond-des-Blancs. And we make all very beautiful hand embroidered items, which I should have brought, but I did not bring. The embroidery has been looked at around the world, Milan, we have designers from Milan, Paris, New York, Boston, Port-au-Prince, people looking at the embroidery, people looking at the skills and telling us very, very good skills. The French aren't as on board as everybody else, but that's to be expected, right? So this sewing skills, these sewing skills have been passed on for generation to generation. It's not something that we brought to them, it's something that we saw 20 years ago. We decided to say, hey, can we make this better? Can we make this bigger? What can this possibly mean for the women of Guadeloupe? Today we have about 90 women who work for us doing sewing, embroidery, leather working. And what's beautiful about this, it's an artisan workshop. These people are artisans, not just workers. And oftentimes we will give the work out, the women take it home and they do it at home and bring it back to us. So it's not something that they need to be at our artisan workshop doing, they can be doing it anywhere. So we're real proud of that. This year, the sales, this costs about $136,000 to run each year. And this year, the sales are up almost to $85,000 this year. So that's on its way to becoming sustainable, something that could be potentially spun off. We work with a number of, we're blessed to work with a number of people in New York who run the New York Gift Show and help us to showcase our wares as part of an artisan group twice a year there, and designers from there. And the designers that we get to work with come from the connections in New York. Everything happens in New York. Let's see, I'll go to the clinic. I talked a little bit about the clinic. The one little piece about the clinic I guess that you should know is that patients pay for, anything that we do is paid for by the people who use it. Library, clinic, and we pay the artisans, obviously. So the clinic fees can start to pay for the clinic, and then we're also doing this thing called hygiene kits where we're making menstrual pads reusable and hopefully disposable at some point. We hope to put them into a clinic and be able to sell them to people, and also hopefully sell them to big organizations like Red Cross or organizations doing post-disaster development work who are buying these kinds of kits from China and bringing them to Haiti and giving them out. The idea is, why couldn't they just buy them in Haiti and give them out? Because we know there's going to be another disaster. I won't talk too much about this. This is sort of a dream. We do have a guest house and people come and visit and tour the area and generate a little bit of income. And then the library. So we have an existing library. We have the library cyber cafe. What does that really mean? It means it's a building, it's not very big, it's run down, it has a leaky roof. But at the same time, it's off the grid. We have solar panels, we have generators, and we have IMAX donated by MIT. And people are willing to pay to go to the library. People are very, very proud of their library cards. It's sort of a badge of something, of education. And people are willing to pay money to use the internet, which isn't really that surprising, right? All the kids want to be on Facebook, just like all the kids here. So we have an existing library. It has about 3,000 books in it, not 300. We have a lecture series on Thursday nights where we invite people from Port-au-Prince or from around to talk about issues in the community, or sometimes we have animal husbandry programs or agricultural programs because it's a bigger agricultural area. So let me show you a little bit what these things look like. So the artisan workshop is really access to jobs. Like I said, there's about 90 women working for us, and then there's all of the people that go around that. They do everything from sewing to knitting to packaging and getting things out the door, labeling. All raw materials, however, are brought in from most all raw materials, unfortunately, are brought in from the United States to Haiti and then made into things. Because Haiti used to have a big source of cotton in about the 70s, but all of Haiti's industries were pretty much wiped out. So we're trying to think about new products, things that might we could use with bamboo, or and some of the canvas that we get is now sourced in Haiti. So we still have a raw materials problem. But let me just show you a little bit. Before the program started 20 years ago, and we just updated these numbers in 2013. So the point of the project was to get women to be able to pay for medicine, send their kids to school, purchase livestock, and maybe be able to make repairs on their homes. And here are the numbers rerun. So before they worked for us, you can see that, in terms of paying for medicine, so they would have free care to doctors or nurses in the area because there's a hospital right near us that provides a free care, but once they're done at the doctor's office to go and get the medicine, they didn't have the money for the medicine. So you could go to the doctor, but then you couldn't treat. So 23% could pay for medications most of the time, and now 57% can do so. The big thing is, in Haiti, it's very important to send your kids to school. It's a really highly valued mark of class to be able to send your kid to pay and send your kid to school. Not so you see where most of the money is spent, in addition to feeding and clothing your children. Livestock's real important because not only do they work for us at the Artisana and the clinic and the library, but they also are able to have these little businesses on the side, raising livestock. So for example, you will buy a goat for your child when your child is born, and then you will sell it when the child is about 5. The child is actually in charge of raising that goat, so that child is in charge of taking care of that asset. And then the goat is sold so that the kid can go to school. So it's a bank account of sorts. And then make repairs or begin construction. Construction on homes happens incrementally. It's not you just don't have the money to do what you want to do. So they do things very slowly. So that's some measure of success anyway. Access to family health clinic services, as I was telling you, mostly family planning work that we do. This is the main clinic area. We started out with a total of 37 patients in 20 years ago, and we now have over 4,000 patient visits. So our reach is pretty good. We're hoping to expand that, as I mentioned. So in terms of education, how do we focus and how do we do? We're all about women's empowerment, thinking about how to augment the role of women in the rural areas. And so it's important to us to think about other ways or innovative ways to reach those young girls. And one way we do so is to have a 64-member soccer team on the ground. And that's super exciting because I don't really care if it's soccer. It could be anything. It could be bowling for all I care, which probably really wouldn't work. But soccer is, obviously the national sport. It's something that people pay attention to. And the soccer team is also a way for us to get those young girls, sometimes before menstruation. We can talk to them about leadership. We can talk to them about their bodies. And we can supply them with, new ideas and new thoughts. And the other thing is the soccer team has to do community service as part of belonging to the soccer team. You don't have to pay to belong to the soccer team, but you have to do community service. So we can get them involved, and they help clean up the library. They help organize books. They also help with the literacy program for the little ones that we host on Saturday mornings. Not to leave the men out, we do have a beekeeping program. This is actually kind of not in line with our mission at all. But I decided to take on the beekeeping program because honestly, I just couldn't let the bees go. Couldn't let them die. Couldn't let them not be taken care of. So this program was on its way out because of funding. So we adopted it, and I learned something really interesting, and it has to do with the library, the new library that we're hoping to build. What I learned from the beekeeping was that they were having something called a varroa mite. If anybody knows anything about bees, these bee colonies were being attacked by this thing called the varroa mite. And we didn't have money for pesticides, we didn't have access to pesticides, and we actually didn't really want to use pesticides because we were trying to do everything organically. And it turns out, so they went to talk to the local Haitian farmers about what to do about this problem. And it turns out that if you sprinkle powdered sugar on top of the bee colonies, the bees will start to clean themselves of the sugar. And when they clean themselves of the sugar, they clean themselves of the mites. And if you spread a little bit of Crisco on the bottom of the floor, the mites will get stuck and not be able to crawl back up into the colony, and it saved the colony. So we had this problem, and I was thinking about indigenous knowledge, right? So, and I was thinking about the library, how to capture that knowledge. We have this, so this mite just is more recent to Hawaii than, say, other parts of the United States. Do we know about this in the United States? I don't know, I'm not a beekeeping specialist or researcher, but so what other knowledge do we not know about that's indigenous to you that we could then we could share? What if we could do a south-north sharing, as well as a north-south sharing, you know, in terms of information, or access to information, or access to ideas? Or even maybe we just need to test the beekeeping idea. Maybe it's not viable, or maybe it just works, who knows? But the Haitian farmers seem to know. So it got me thinking about indigenous knowledge. So I could tell you a little bit more about the library. As I mentioned, the importance of education is important. I also should mention that education is problematic in Haiti, really problematic, in that these children, especially in the rural areas, only speak Creole, and the education that's offered is usually bad French. So you have a disconnect between what the child understands at home and then what the child's being taught. And it wouldn't necessarily, you know, can't kids learn in another language? Can't kids, you know, be at home in one language and learn? Yes, if it's good French and if it's a good education, sure. But we're talking about poor education. We're talking about teachers that are poorly trained. A lot of the times don't show up. Use corporal punishment as part of the teaching method. A lot of problems with education. And so for me, education in Haiti is a very overwhelming topic. I'm not even sure how I would begin to make a dent in the problems that Haiti has, except for through a library, except for through after-school programming, or before-school programming, or Saturday programming. So I can run my library whatever way I want, in whatever language I want, and provide whatever resources I want. I suppose I could do the same if I had a school too. But for me, rethinking about a community library or education through libraries, so that a library might even become more than just a library, but might become the real place where people get educated in this little community in Haiti. What if kids could access the internet? What if kids could go access an artist in residence, or a teacher in residence, or somebody visiting? And what about this sharing of knowledge? So, and who would believe that a rural, off-the-grid library that we have now could actually work? But it does. We serve an area of 45,000 to 60,000 people. Nobody seems to know the real number. I've been trying to get a hold of this real number for a long time. Because I want to cut it in half and say, okay, I got to reach 30,000 women, right, with my clinic. I want to know how many, okay, I got to reach 40, you know, how many, most of the population, though I can say, is, or a big percentage, I would say 40 or 50% is below, are the youth population, big youth population. Life expectancy is somewhere around 60 years old. But we have, this number is old, we actually redid it. So we have 1,200 library card members, 700 computer users. We have only 7 computers, we have more. MIT just donated a bunch to me. And then you can see our very few books. So this library, and everyone pays for computer use to be a library member, to borrow books. People pay to be at the library. People want to be at the library. And I know this more than ever because I'm in the process of reorganizing the library right now. We had to shut down for a month or so, and I am not a very popular person right now. The fact that the library has been shut down. So here's our children's librarian. So she runs the project on the Saturday children's group activity, thinking about literacy, thinking about how to give the kids a bit of a boost on Saturdays and give the moms a break. She runs that. Science, math, engineering, music program. This program was run last January I put together a team from MIT's Media Lab and Lincoln Labs and some Canadian Haitian, a Canadian Haitian guy who's actually a gym teacher. We brought in a gym teacher to sort of keep the kids going. And what they did was they worked with the kids on how to program use these little programming devices called Arduinos, and how to make music. And they used music as a way into the kids' thinking and how to talk about sound waves, the engineering of music, different types of music, and how to program music. And it was a brilliant workshop. We're going to run it again this year in January, so if any of you happen to be in rural Fond Blanc, please stop by, or if you are interested in this program, let me know. So what can a place like MIT's Media Lab bring to rural Haiti? What can a Canadian gym teacher bring to a library in Haiti? Those are the things, these are the different programs we've been testing out. So going forward, what are we thinking about, and how are we rethinking libraries? So I think that the library is going to be the key to the growth and the development and the advancement. I think it's the ticket into that, to changing education in Haiti. I could be completely wrong, I might be crazy. But I think that this and in addition to jobs, we have to provide jobs, right? We have to have access to healthcare. But then how do we reach the youth and make a change? How do we reach the very, very rural parts of Haiti? So, you have your traditional library with books, and all of you are experts on libraries much more than I am. I am just, learning this stuff. But a technology hub, and I keep thinking about actually community labs, something I'm calling community labs. Like a are any of you familiar with the Fab Labs that MIT has around the world? So what they have in the libraries and some different parts of, they have these things called fabrication labs. It's basically a room about this size. And inside the room, they'll pack in computers and lathes and different 3D printers, you've got one over there, different equipment that allows you to fabricate anything. So you could fabricate a house, a chair, you could fabricate electronics. They have one in South Boston, they have one in Afghanistan, they have one in South Africa. And these labs, Fab Labs, they actually talk to each other around the world. Oh, I learned how to do this, hey, what do you think? And they'll grow like a set of plans out to all of the centers. And you could, if you have the raw materials, right, which is always a problem, you could pick it up and you could make whatever so-and-so made. Or you could learn a technique, or you could, when they have, they teach online different ways to use the equipment. So I'm thinking fabrication lab, which would be certainly fantastic in this library if we could afford the power for it. But I'm also thinking about community labs, or community place where you could house indigenous knowledge, place where you could invite people from all over the world to use as a research center, and places where the nexus, or the place where the community meets the outside world, that north-south exchange. And then, so what is our library? What is our library, and how does it fit in? Okay, so I've been thinking about the role of indigenous knowledge research labs in rural areas. But what if we had access, real access to one of the most vulnerable places in the world? Haiti has earthquakes to study, tsunamis, floods, hurricanes, poverty, disease. Not Ebola, thank God. But it does have disease. I actually just picked up 2 tropical diseases myself over the summer and brought them home. Dengue fever and chikungunya, something new from Tanzania called chikungunya. Debilitating, but a lot of joint pain, very hard. But no one is studying this thing. It's rampant across the Caribbean, so if you head there on vacation, beware of the mosquitoes that bite during the day. These things could be studied, and we could create a place to study them. So here are some preliminary sketches. I don't know what this thing should look like. I'm guessing, and I'm guessing with architects, I'm guessing with engineers, but I'm not guessing yet with librarians. So what kinds of spaces do we need in this? These are just sketches, this is all movable and changeable. But according to our library, so we have a library committee in Haiti, Haitian Library Committee, Haitian Library Board, and a U.S. Library Board, although there's not a librarian on it, which should be. They wanted, the Haitian board wants access to outdoor space, so they could bring animals, or they could bring, plants, to have classes about these kinds of things, which are it's part of the community, right? I wrote in a Fab Lab. I'm thinking about a community lab. I called it a classroom, but how about a community lab near a classroom? But what would it near the Fab Lab? Does it need water? I don't know what these things need. Auditoriums, you can present talks, and then more classroom space, or maybe it needs to be open. It all needs to be, unfortunately, locked down. It has to be secure, because you will have had break-ins. So there are some constraints. Second floor. the community decided it wanted the traditional libraries with the books on the second floor, not the first floor, which I thought was kind of interesting. And we said, well, what about the spinal cord patients who, at the hospital, who also want access to books, and the newspaper that arrives every day at the library is huge. Like, all the old people go there and we read the different newspapers that we have. It's a big, you start to learn what you can touch and what you cannot touch. They wanted the library on the second floor. And there's no elevator. How are we going to get the patients up? Oh, we'll just carry them. Is that okay? Also, in Haiti, people sit closer to each other than they do when we do in this country. So the personal space doesn't have to be as big, even though they're in the country. So we can design, 6 tables. But in my experience, when we did the workshop last January, they had a bench that could fit 3, and they had four people stuck on there, maybe a little kid on the lap. Upper auditorium, more classroom space, and then I'm thinking about an apartment for some kind of researcher or artist in residence or somebody. Of course, we have to have solar, it has to be off the grid and all that stuff. So the Kellogg Foundation has agreed to fund most of this project. So it's a real project. And I'm raising money for the rest of it, which I think it's not going to be a problem. What do you think?
I think so many things that I can tell you. But let me start with just your library space. First of all, the trend in library architecture now is, and much architecture at cultural heritage institutions, is flexible space, because you don't know how people might want to use the space in the future. And you don't have small spaces. One successful thing that some rural libraries in the States have done is these intergenerational connections where kids interview their grandparents. So you don't want to put them in a big room.
Right.
So you should have modular walls or something so you can break up the space. And even if you have the books on the second floor, you can have another thing that some college libraries are doing now, as well as public libraries, is you have a little browsing space with new materials on the first floor, like a little reading area with new popular things, and then you can have a more permanent collection on the second floor if you want. But I think flexible spaces is really critical, and that'll help also with some handicap issues you may have, because you might not always have people who can carry people up and down the stairs. And small, intimate spaces, because you're right, in many parts of the world, people work closer together. It's more Western European and North American to have space. It's fascinating when you walk in libraries in different parts of the world. There'll be 1 or 2 people at a big table here with their stuff all over the place. And then there'll be 8 people at the same size table, in some other places. So you want to have spaces that recognize that kind of thing. So, and it's important to have spaces that aren't already, assign particular functions so that you can make those changes. And you might want to have the ability to serve food at some functions too. I think in Massachusetts, libraries, some public libraries may be mandated to do this if they get some support from the state, is to have an outside space so that when the library is not open during regular hours, people can meet there. And you don't have to have anything valuable in that space, but it gives a community meeting space for hours the library can't be open, because you always have to think about hours and what you can fund in terms of staffing those hours. And then I just had a related question. So I'm gathering from what you've said that education and libraries are not for free there. Right. Yes, because the American model is that the public library is for free, is publicly supported.
Right. Well, the libraries, you can go in the library, but in order to check out a book, you have to have a library card.
Okay, so then you can have community spaces in the library and programs
anyone
that
is
are
welcome,
open to
and
the
you can
public.
come read the newspaper, which they will
Okay.
do, and you can use the spaces. But to check out a book, we want to know who you are, and it costs, I think it's 10 cents.
And then I guess my other question is, what languages are the collections in? Are they Creole and French?
Good question. So most of it is in French, but we're trying to populate with, a big problem we have is content in Creole, access to content in Creole and how to gain access. The language has not been written for very long. So maybe 25 years it's been written in the current form. It was written in a different form before then. So, you know, what kinds of books are you gonna find that are Creole? There are more and more now, but even just translating works into Creole, it's just not, there's no demand. There's no demand for that, or there's not much demand for that.
And then finally, are the computers solar powered right now?
So the computers, we have solar power, so they can run on the solar, and we also have a generator. So it's certain of the, so for example, the irons cannot run on the solar, they trip the solar. I think if you don't have too many computers on, you can run on solar, but I'd have to check that.
Yeah, I know MIT developed, you know, those little laptops that can be run fully on solar.
The XOs, the one laptop per child.
Yeah, exactly.
Program, yeah.
So the other thing is you can create kiosks, digital kiosks that have resources on them, like newspapers or popular magazines in any languages you want. And I don't know how those would be powered, if they would need generator power or what. So I think there's so many innovative things that are going on right now with libraries that the sky's the limit. Don't limit yourself too much to something that looks more like a traditional library.
It's funny, the architect is telling me that when you ask people sort of like to think about something new or innovative, they just make it bigger. They don't necessarily change the space. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have some suggestions. I work at Simmons College Library across the quad, and over the summer we went to an innovative space at Wheelock College, their Earl Center for Learning and Innovation, and they had some really neat things there, and they talked about their renovation process. And one of the things that they really emphasized is having an architect who works with you to develop the flexible and modular arrangement of the seating and the spaces and the walls, and is also available to, after the fact, talk to you about what you don't like, what's not working for your patrons, and maybe, you know, make modifications based on that. So having that kind of a relationship with them spelled out in the contract or whatever you're going for could be really useful.
Interesting.
And also, their seating in particular is very, you know, colorful and playful, and they're kind of little wedges themselves that can be stacked or moved, or good for like circle time for kids, or good for sitting on for adults. So I would like to echo the flexibility. And then also, they did have something interesting that was called a library box. I don't know if anyone else here has heard of it, but it's basically, it sends out a signal that basically transmits certain electronic resources, like different resources over, and creates a wireless network kind of remotely. So that might be something that's interesting. Maybe not for this particular project, but because I think it relies on the users having their own devices to download things to, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, pop-up libraries are another one that are really interesting. We had some students here work on that with MIT students. It was a combination of our students and MIT design students about 3 or 4 years ago in Chinatown, where there were a lot of empty storefronts. And you can create pop-up libraries in those kinds of spaces. So I don't know how many spaces there are down there that are unoccupied. But they came up with some really interesting modular designs that could be assembled very easily.
One thing I have seen in my hometown is that they have these little houses like in the park, and it says teeny little library, and you just people put books in there for kids, and then they take them out and they put.
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure that would work really well, because I'm sure that books would disappear and not come back, but maybe over time or some way to track that. But those little teeny libraries, you're sitting in the park and you just go to the little library and you pull a book. It's such a cool idea. I keep thinking about that.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about that, like in library speak, It's usually called a lending library, so.
Okay.
And post offices have them, or, just random places have them, and it's basically take a book, leave a book idea.
Yeah.
And I really like that idea for children's books, because I think people would be way less likely to keep them indefinitely and not return them for the other kids of the community,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving this presentation. I have to sprint out in just a second to class, but I just wanted to say, this problem of the content not being in the language that would be ideal for the community, I have heard this problem before in a really interesting talk earlier this year about libraries in African countries that used to be British colonies, and the reason I'm thinking of those specifically is that, as you can imagine, with the diversity of African languages, that was really an issue at the library that was being started, because of course even the European languages won't cut it. And so one solution that was found is that some of these countries that used to be more industrial than they are now, just by a sad trick of history, will have had presses in the past that printed more things in local languages that don't exist anymore, or at least don't exist in the location. I don't know how much that would be applicable to Haiti in terms of the history of the diaspora, or how things were industrially, say, in the cotton days or something, but it might be worth looking into in terms of cultural centers that may have preserved these things in archival form. I know one success that was found by the person who gave this particular talk was things like children's books that were printed in the 40s and that have survived in all kinds of random university libraries in the US actually, a lot of archival spaces across the world. So that might be something worth looking into in terms of it sounds like you're well connected anyway, so if you have cultural resources in terms of people who might have those things. And now that there are so many technologies in terms of if there are digital copies and being able to print them out, I think it's Amazon that runs that service, where you can get your own books bound if you order something free online. So that might be something that you could set up in a more industrial way long term. But just to find out if there is more Creole content that exists than currently exists where you are,
Right.
Where you're operating in Haiti, or even in Port-au-Prince maybe doesn't have enough anymore, but it may exist somewhere else. It's just, I don't know if that will lead you anywhere, but I thought it was interesting that there have been successes in other demographics.
Yeah.
So, but thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I guess the other thing I had was a questionnaire that I had, so we've sent this out to, I've sent it out to colleagues in Haiti. It's been in French, it went to Fondé Blanc, it's been to Harvard, been to, I don't know, whoever else we could think of to send it to, educators, local librarians. So, I don't know, we're trying to figure out, what this should be and how we can create it and get a lot of input on it. Because we really don't think that we're the experts. We know it works, what we have, and we know we can find the money for it. But we, and I think we want to know if we can leapfrog towards better education in this one little space in Haiti. And if we can, the Kellogg Foundation is working in a number of different areas in Haiti and in the world. And so then could we begin to export ideas, or could a library be a way towards better development for different regions throughout Haiti, or different regions? Could the library be that one grounding point? And the planners in my department at MIT, some would agree and some would not, that it could be the way to begin conversation about not just education, but maybe access to clean water or electricity, or maybe that one project could begin to facilitate growth in other areas. I don't know.
Vietnam might be an interesting model for you. They have these learning resource centers, and they have community activities, and they are able to answer your last question, or second last question, in terms of self-sustaining. My other question is, who drew this schematic for you?
So we have architecture services donated to us by KMW Architecture in Roxbury, actually. And the architect's name is Bruce Wood.
So would they be a likely architect for this, or are you just sort of playing around with some schematics at this point?
Yeah, Bruce has agreed to be the architect on the project. And Weidlinger has agreed to do the structure for free for us and to design the structure so that it will stand up in an earthquake and a hurricane. And we probably won't get tsunamis because we're too far in. But flooding, all of those conditions. We wanted American construction methods to be used when designing, but we wanted an architect that would be open to hearing from the community in Haiti. So these are the plans that just were sent down to Haiti last week, to have the community take a look at them and maybe begin a dialogue and charrette with the community. And then for the construction, we plan to hire a Haitian engineering construction firm for that. Because honestly, we wouldn't know how to construct otherwise. We would lose half the materials probably. There are a lot of issues with construction and materials. So that's who's been working on the plans for us. We had tried another firm before this, but it didn't work out, so we went through one iteration already, and then now we're on the second iteration. Are there any particular designers that you know?
No, I was just curious more. I mean, the seismic expertise in the world is in the United States and Japan. I mean, they've done phenomenal research and work in seismic, as you can imagine. So getting that kind of expertise in the plans, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then my other thought, which I don't think I put it up here, but thinking whether or not this library could also double as, say, a command center in time of an emergency. So equipping the library with things like satellite phones, and obviously it will have, well, not obviously, but it will have its own rainwater collection equipment, as well as a well. So water will be stored on the property, and satellite links to the property, and generators. So to me, it really could function. It really feels, I don't mean a shelter that we would take people in. It's not big enough for that.
A command
But really
center,
a command, where could you get information, be able to disseminate information to the public? So library, a library, we call it a library because it makes sense when we're trying to raise money for it, but it can be so many different things now.
And it has been. I mean, there's if you read a lot in American libraries or some of those, the libraries played a critical role in New Orleans.
Right.
And they connected people, and so there's more and more of that. There's more and more planning and activities around libraries as playing those roles in times of disasters.
And if you remember during Katrina, that was the time when people figured out texting. The texting was working, whereas the phones were not working, because of travels over a different kind of network. But I didn't realize the role of libraries during Katrina. Interesting. I took that up.
Yeah, I can certainly connect you with some people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a little bit of a peripheral interest in it because I did disaster recovery for a long time in my career earlier on. And it's the library community and the preservation community really was able to do stuff relatively quickly after Katrina.
Interesting. And they would have the network.
Yes, and there's regional conservation centers that do this work, and we have one of the best and the oldest right here in New England. It's the Northeast Document Conservation Center. And some of these centers have worked in the Caribbean already, so that's part of the world they're used to. I'll run to my office and give you my card, and then I can send you the names of some people who've done work in this area. It makes so much sense. I mean, now's the time to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And the World Bank I worked for the World Bank also on another project with MIT in Haiti, and they were really interested in how to build back better and how to create spaces that could withstand, the next big hurricane or whatever it's going to be. So I'm trying to get them interested in this project and community development, and beginning to think about how to use a community project, a community, something that the community believes as is their own already. They already believe the library is theirs. They don't think of it as our Haiti Projects library. In fact, we don't even call it that. They call it the community library of Fond du Blanc. And so they already have taken ownership. So how to build on that, how to work with that.
I think on the heels of that, part of the multimedia center should have some sort of recording station, so the elderly population can record their stories.
Yeah,
And that would really help to take ownership of the physical space as part of the community.
Yeah, and that's a great intergenerational activity, particularly for people who can't read and write.
Yeah,
You know, it's another way for them to be able to participate in the library.
right.
Because some people, I think, have the impression that you can only use a library if you know how to read.
So that should go a long way to some of that south-north
Yeah.
knowledge sharing.
Yeah. And storytelling is such a big part of the culture that it makes a lot of sense to affirm that in some way, like StoryCorps that we have here, or and some of the other projects that are around where you can go in with your relatives and tell your story. Oh, well, this is great. This is really helpful. I'll leave my card, and I'd love to get your thoughts on sort of what my class library would be. I would love to incorporate as many ideas as possible into this project. Have people come visit, do your dissertation, do your master's thesis, whatever you want. I'm open to learning and sharing, because we really want to make this a place where, we really want to give to the community a signature building with the kinds of resources that can make a difference. And think or help people or educate them in a way that lifts them out of poverty, or lifts the thinking out of that, that opens up access to other ideas around the world somehow. So it's probably way too tall of an order for 5,000 square feet or whatever it is going to be. But dreaming, I think, is maybe the best place. And if you knew how far we've come with this little team project, you can see the, if we started with 37 patients and now we're at 4,000 and have a library and job, which wasn't my doing, it was the founder's doing. You could, just who knew that you could, that you could begin to make a difference somewhere. And it's rewarding to see the little kids who show up on Saturday mornings, and the girls are on one side and the boys are on the other side. The boys are fooling around, the girls are not, and which it should be the other way around, right? But and just if you go and see those kids learning to read, it's the coolest. And I don't know how to teach someone to read, so for me it's just really super exciting to see those little ones. And then the winter project was just amazing. That those kids learned how to program in 5 days. Could do it. It was all in Creole too. We're teaching in Creole when we do our workshops. So I understand. The guy that did the Creole workshop he's actually a Haitian guy, Haitian American, and he I'm just grabbing my card, and he so he speaks Creole, and he's a PhD physicist, electrical engineer, and speaks all languages. So he's just he's a really good friend of mine. We taught together at MIT now, and then he was at London Labs. And now he's trying to work on some project with owls and mosquitoes and sound acoustics. I have no idea. So just somebody that looks like them, because he looks more like them than I do, and highly educated and speaking Creole. That just blows away. It was very hard for some of our librarian at the time, who's no longer our librarian, because he's too rigid. That man had so much of a problem with Dale speaking Creole and teaching in Creole. It was a big issue we had to get through before we could hold the workshop. Whether or not Dale could speak Creole to the kids, or whether he had, because of course Dale speaks both French and Creole, or whether he had to speak French. And now that I'm working with the community, trying to hire the new librarian, and they've decided, the community elders, whatever, decided that we were going to create a test in French, so that whoever wanted to be the librarian had to take this test. Like, no, I'm taking tests. for hiring people. It's just that, it's just the mentality. It's a very top-down mentality, so breaking, breaking rules, so that we can offer, and even this modular idea will be difficult may be difficult, but it's a great idea, why not? I think we went through a time with classrooms where we decided it was great to have them all open, and then we decided maybe it wasn't so great to have them all open, it was too noisy, and we closed them, and then we started opening them up again. So I know there's been a lot of change over time with education, sort of the best space, best types of spaces.